place where the contrivers were met. Now when they saw that their messenger was returned safe and sound, they were greatly gladded thereat. Then he presented them with his letter which he had brought from Diabolus for them, the which, when they had read and considered, did much augment their gladness. They asked him after the welfare of their friends, as how their lord Diabolus, Lucifer, and Beelzebub did with the rest of those of the den. To which this profane made answer, Well, well, my lords, they are well, even as well as can be in their place. They also, said he, did ring for joy at the reading of your letter, as you well perceived by this when you read it. Now as was said, when they had read their letter, and perceived that it encouraged them in their work, they fell to their way of contriving again, namely, how they might complete their Diabolonian design upon man's soul. And the first thing that they agreed upon was to keep all things from man's soul, as close as they could. Let it not be known, let not man's soul be acquainted with what we design against it. The next thing was, how, or by what means, they should try to bring to pass the ruin and overthrow of man's soul. And one said after this manner, and another said after that. Then stood up Mr. Deceit, and said, My right Diabolonian friends, our lords, and the high ones of the deep dungeon, do propound unto us these 3 ways. 1, whether we had best to seek its ruin by making man's soul loose and vain. 2, or whether by driving them to doubt and despair. 3, or whether by endeavouring to blow them up by the gunpowder of pride and self-conceit. Now I think, if we shall tempt them to pride, that may do something, and if we tempt them to wantonness, that may help. But in my mind, if we could drive them into desperation, that would knock the nail on the head, for then we should have them, in the first place, question the truth of the love of the heart of their prince towards them, and that will disgust him much. This, if it works well, will make them leave off quickly their way of sending petitions to him. Then farewell earnest solicitations for help and supply. For then this conclusion lies naturally before them, as good do nothing, as do to no purpose. So to Mr. Deceit they unanimously did consent. Then the next question was, But how shall we do to bring this our project to pass? And it was answered by the same gentleman that this might be the best way to do it. Even let, quoth he, so many of our friends as are willing to venture themselves for the promoting of their prince's cause, disguise themselves with apparel, change their names, and go into the market like far countrymen, and proffer to let themselves for servants to the famous town of Man's Soul, and let them pretend to do for their masters as beneficially as may be. For by so doing they may, if Man's Soul shall hire them, in little time so corrupt and defile the corporation, that her now prince shall be not only further offended with them, but in conclusion shall spew them out of his mouth. And when this is done, our prince Diabolus shall prey upon them with ease. Yea, of themselves they shall fall into the mouth of the eater. This project was no sooner propounded, but was as highly accepted, and forward were all Diabolonians now to engage in so delicate an enterprise. But it was not thought fit that all should do thus, wherefore they pitched upon 2 or 3, namely, the Lord Covetousness, the Lord Lasciviousness, and the Lord Anger. The Lord Covetousness called himself by the name of Prudent Thrifty, the Lord Lasciviousness called himself by the name of Harmless Mirth, and the Lord Anger called himself by the name of Good Zeal. So upon a market day they came into the market-place, 3 lusty fellows they were to look on, and they were clothed in sheep's russet, which was also now in a manner as white as were the white robes of the men of Man's Soul. Now the men could speak the language of Man's Soul well. So when they were come into the market-place, and had offered to let themselves to the townsmen, they were presently taken up. For they asked but little wages, and promised to do their masters great service. Mr. Mind hired Prudent Thrifty, and Mr. Godly Fear hired Good Zeal. True, this fellow Harmless Mirth did hang a little in hand, and could not so soon get him a master as the others did, because the town of Man's Soul was now in Lent. But after a while, because Lent was almost out, the Lord Will-be-will hired Harmless Mirth to be both his waiting man and his lackey, and thus they got themselves masters. These villains now being got thus far into the houses of the men of man's soul, quickly began to do so great mischief therein. For, being filthy, arch, and sly, they quickly corrupted the families where they were. Yea, they tainted their masters much, especially this prudent Thrifty, and him they call harmless Mirth. True, he that went under the visor of good zeal was not so well liked of his master, for he quickly found that he was but a counterfeit rascal, the which when the fellow perceived, with speed he made his escape from the house, or I doubt not but his master had hanged him. Well, when these vagabonds had thus far carried on their design, and had corrupted the town as much as they could, in the next place they considered with themselves at what time their prince Diabolus without, and themselves within the town, should make an attempt to seize upon man's soul. And they all agreed upon this, that a market day would be best for that work. For why? Then will the townsfolk be busy in their ways, and always take this for a rule, when people are most busy in the world, they least fear surprise. We also then, said they, shall be able with this less suspicion to gather ourselves together for the work of our friends and lords. Yea, and in such a day if we shall attempt our work and miss it, we may, when they shall give us the rout, the better hide ourselves in the crowd and escape. These things being thus far agreed upon by them, they wrote another letter to Diabolus and sent it by the hand of Mr. Profane, the contents of which were these. The lords of looseness send to the great and high Diabolus from our dens, caves, holes, and strongholds, in and about the wall of the town of man's soul, greeting. Our great lord and the nourisher of our lives, Diabolus, how glad we were when we heard of your fatherhood's readiness to comply with us, and help forward our design in our attempts to ruin man's soul. None can tell but those who, as we do, set themselves against all appearance of good, when and wheresoever we find it. Touching the encouragement that your greatness is pleased to give us to continue to devise, contrive, and study the utter desolation of man's soul, that we are not solicitous about. For we know right well that it cannot but be pleasing and profitable to us to see our enemies and them that seek our lives die at our feet or fly before us. We therefore are still contriving, and that to the best of our cunning, to make this work most facile and easy to your lordships and to us. First, we considered of that most hellishly cunning, compacted, threefold project, that by you was propounded to us in your last, and have concluded, that though to blow them up with the gunpowder of pride would do well, and to do it by tempting them to be loose and vain will help on, yet to contrive to bring them into the gulf of desperation, we think will do best of all. Now we who are at your beck have thought of 2 ways to do this. First, we, for our parts, will make them as vile as we can, and then you with us at a time appointed shall be ready to fall upon them with the utmost force. And of all the nations that are at your whistle, we think that an army of doubters may be the most likely to attack and overcome the town of man's soul. Thus shall we overcome these enemies, else the pit shall open her mouth upon them, and desperation shall thrust them down into it. We have also to effect this so much by us desired design, sent already 3 of our trusty Diabolonians among them. They are disguised in garb, they have changed their names, and are now accepted of them, namely, covetousness, lasciviousness, and anger. The name of covetousness is changed to prudent Thrifty, and him Mr. Mind has hired, and is almost become as bad as our friend. Lasciviousness has changed his name to harmless Mirth, and he is got to be the Lord Wilbywill's lackey, but he has made his master very wanton. Anger changed his name into Good Zeal, and was entertained by Mr. Godly Fear, but the peevish old gentleman took pepper in the nose, and turned our companion out of his house. Nay, he has informed us since that he ran away from him, or else his old master had hanged him up for his labour. Now these have much helped forward our work and design upon man's soul, for notwithstanding the spite and quarrelsome temper of the old gentleman last mentioned, the other 2 ply their business well, and are likely to ripen the work apace. Our next project is, that it be concluded that you come upon the town upon a market day, and that when they are upon the heat of their business. For then, to be sure, they will be most secure, and least think an assault will be made upon them. they will also at such a time be less able to defend themselves, and to offend you in the prosecution of our design. And we your trusty